Sustainability is all about lowering your carbon footprint.
And what better way to do that than to grow food at home and eliminate all those transport emissions?
But this may not be as easy as it sounds, especially if you don't have the space.
So in this video, we're going to show you how you can use wall space to grow a vertical herb garden. Now, we hadn't actually planned on releasing any videos this month because we're working on something super exciting behind the scenes, ready for next month's video, which we hope you guys are going to absolutely love.
But over on our Instagram, we've been posting some of our older projects, and this one went off like crazy and was by far the most popular reel we've ever done. In it, we showed you a wall-mounted herb garden that we made that could be dropped down to allow for easy watering and taking cuttings of herbs.
So we figured we'd carve out a little bit of time just to re-edit this into a YouTube video so we can show you guys how we made it.
And since this was filmed a few years back, those of you that have been with us long enough can enjoy a lovely trip down memory lane as it was filmed in our old workshop.
To keep with a bit of an eco theme, we used scrap materials wherever we could, like these planter boxes that we started off making out of an old bed frame.
We made 3 of these for the 3 tiers of plants, but you can customise it to whatever space that you have. Just make sure you have a think about how much space you'll need for the plants that you want to grow. Because each box needs to swing as it goes from the vertical to the horizontal position, we added a hole for a pivot point in each of the side pieces. These will be mounted on some rod later on, but if we left it as bare wood, the holes will wear away over time, so we're going to add in some bushings.
A bushing is just a fancy word for a bit of metal tube glued into a hole, so we cut some up and glued them in. Then we glued all the boxes together with some weatherproof wood glue and added some screws just to hold it all together while the glue dries.
We cut the corners off each of the bases just to help with drainage, as well as let the water trickle down from the top boxes to the lower ones.
Once all the glue was dry, we came back and took all the screws out to replace them with hardwood dowels, purely just to make it look fancy.
We cut all of the dowels flush, which meant it was time to sand. Like all makers, sanding is our absolute favourite part, so we're going to save that luxury for later on.
Next, we needed to work on a frame that would hold all of this together. And before we do anything, we need to make sure that all the holes we drilled in the side pieces line up perfectly with the frame, otherwise it's all going to look wonky and terrible.
So we clamped the boxes to some nice chunky bits of wood, which were actually some offcuts that we found in a skip down the road, and then transferred across the hole locations.
Then it was time to turn these 2 side pieces into a frame, which is probably the most important part of this whole project, as it has to be the strongest to hold everything in place. And since our design was this kind of open top U shape, the 2 joints at the bottom were very, very important, so we decided to go with a finger jointing technique, which in hindsight was probably a little bit over-engineered.
If you add a top piece to the frame, it'll make the whole thing way more stable, and it'll probably be fine with just glue and screws. The reason we couldn't do this is because we didn't have enough wall space to make it any taller, and if we made it any shorter, the plants in the top box would be crushed. We could have dropped down to 2 planter boxes, but we'd already made all 3 by this point, so we figured we'd just crack on.
But saying that, the finger joint method did work really well, and once the glue had all dried, it was absolutely rock solid. So if you're a bit tight on wall space like we are, then this method works absolutely great, it just takes a bit more effort.
Once our U-frame was complete, we just needed to add a couple of nice chunky hinges so this whole contraption could fold flat against the wall.
We marked out the space for the 2 hinges that we actually found off an old door and used a chisel to cut away the material.
And now our favourite task is finally here, sanding. We sanded all of those finger joints using our belt sander, but then switched over to our Geos when we were sanding back the dowels that we'd flush trimmed earlier on.
We found a loose knot in the side of one of our planter boxes, so we mixed up some epoxy and secured that in place before sanding that back as well.
For the frame, we painted it in a stone colour to match the rest of the woodwork in the garden. And for the boxes, we chose an outdoor yacht varnish to preserve the colour of the wood.
We decided to varnish the inside of the boxes as well as the outside, just so that any moisture from the soil wouldn't rot the wood over time.
While all of that was drying, we had to figure out how we were going to get this whole folding mechanism to work. We had the hinges sorted, but we needed some sort of pulley system that would allow us to raise and lower the herb garden nice and easily.
There's almost certainly an off-the-shelf solution you can buy for the ropes and the pulleys, but seeing as we're trying to make everything ourselves, we thought we'd give this one a go as well.
We had a small offcut of nylon kicking about in our workshop, so we chucked this onto our little woodworking lathe to make a couple of little pulley wheels. We were very pleased to say that this worked surprisingly well.
We also found an offcut of aluminium angle, which we cut into these 2 wall bracket size pieces. With a few pieces of scrap plywood, a short piece of metal rod and some black spray paint, we managed to fashion ourselves some fairly decent looking pulleys.
We took these out to our designated growing wall and then fixed these to the brickwork with some wall plugs. Once we'd fixed the U-frame to the wall in the same way, we used a couple of eyelets and some rope to connect it to the pulleys. We also used a very cleverly placed knot in the rope to hold the herb garden perfectly horizontal when it was lowered.
To further protect the wood of the planter boxes from any moisture, we made sure that we put some plastic sheeting and stapled it into place, not forgetting to poke the holes in the corners for drainage.
The boxes are much easier to fill and plant before they're installed, so we added some regular multi-purpose compost before planting our coriander, chives and mint. Perfect for those impromptu mojitos. You can change out what it is you're growing in here based on how sunny the spot is where you're mounting this. Some herbs like full sun, whereas others like a slightly shadier spot, so you should be able to find something that works for you.
And once each box is ready, we added it to the frame with a piece of threaded rod and some nylon washers. And once all the boxes are in, you're done.
The herb garden actually worked a lot better than we thought it might do. Being able to lower the herb garden for watering and taking cuttings, and then raise it back out the way is actually pretty dreamy.
To lock the whole thing in place to make sure it stayed put when folded away, we added a cleat on the wall to tie the rope onto. Being tight up against the wall helps protect both the plants and the frame from any wind, plus any rain that comes down will trickle down and water all three boxes.
Thank you so much for watching this one. It was really fun to go back to an older project for once and look at how we might have done things differently.
We hope you've been inspired to maybe get outside and give growing something for yourself a go, or at least think about how maybe you could reduce your carbon footprint. And we're absolutely buzzing to show you what we've been working on in the background, which should be ready for our next video.
But there's actually a group of people that already know the secret, isn't there, Matt?
Yes.
They're in the know. There's nothing they don't know.
I wondered how you were going to bring this back.
They are the Brotherhood over on Patreon, and they're a wonderful group of people. And we love each and every one of them. And if you want to join them, what do you do, Matt? How do you join them?
Patreon.com/brothersmake. We have 5 tiers available.
It's 5 tiers.
So hopefully something that you might like.
We'd love you to join. If not, we love you for watching the video. We'll see you very soon. Thanks for watching.
See you next time.
Did you catch it this time? It was basil, not mint. You can't put that in your mojito.